once again, my name's Valero, but you can call me Val. We're going to head off and have a bit of fun. We're visiting about 8 locations. At 3 of them, we encourage you to hop off the people mover, have a bit of a walk around. Now let's go to 250 million years ago for a minute. Just this section of the valley we're in, just imagine 100 metres above where we're standing, we had the bottom of a lake, like a perched lake up there. We had algae and other organic material settling at the bottom of the lake. Then we had a layer of sedimentary rock or sandstone deposited on top of that organic material, compressing it for millions of years to form what we call torbanite or kerosene shale. We're going to talk about that a bit later. That's that black rock to the front left of the vehicle. That we're going to talk about the kerosene shale in a moment. The creek now erodes the material and it exposes that deposit of shale, which sits about 2/3 of the way up the hills around us. And that deposit is about 80 centimetres thick. Fast forward to 1850, young fella out here, his name's Ed Carter, and his father Benjamin, they're running cattle down here from time to time. Applies for the rights to mine shale here. He's challenged by a fellow by the name of William Cosgrove. 3-year court battle, Ed Carter wins the case. Some quick statistics. 528 people were born here. 140 people perished here and they're buried at the cemetery just outside our gate, and out of the 140 people buried there, exactly 100 of them were children. We have a private town. This has always been private property, unlike say Mittagong, a public town. Private town, 95% of the population is Scottish Presbyterian, and you have your men, women and children, so the social dynamic here is very different to other towns. And this is the house they built for the mine director. Now, of course, the house was in much better condition back then. We'll talk about the condition of the ruins in a minute. The magic of Joadja begins here a little bit because all the resources they required to build the town were here all the time. The bricks you're looking at are all handmade sandstock bricks. The clay sourced from plenty of clay pits here in the valley. Being elevated, they can gravity feed water to a reservoir to our right behind the orchard manager's house. From there, he can manage a basic irrigation system. So other orchards are copping a drought, but not here in Joadja. Water. In fact, when we cross the creek in a minute, to our left, that creek has never run dry in the past couple of 100 years. Most of the miners here were Freemasons, part of the Masonic movement. They added the annex at the rear of the building. This then became the first Masonic lodge in the Southern Highlands as well, so it's an important building from that perspective. It's referred to as the miners' cottages, but impossible. There were only 22 of these here. You're not going to have 1,400 people living here. The miners, when recruited in Scotland, were promised housing here. So in other words, this was actually more for the middle to upper managers. The miners, when recruited, were promised housing. They didn't read the fine print. Maybe there was no fine print. Once here they had to build their own houses. They were marched out into Russell's Gully. They'd build a slab hut, a bit of timber and bark, and that's it. We are clearing that area, but that's going to take another 6 months or so. So this area is called the retorts, of course. Setting the scene really quickly, this is Russell's Gully. To our left, to our right and further up the gully, 2/3 of the way up the hills, we have the bigger mines, and the men are on their side picking away at the shale. We've seen the main incline. There's a second and a third incline, and they're used to bring material down here. In the background, which is up the gully there, the trolleys are coming down onto a deck that separates the top of the retort liner from the firebox, and they're bringing the richest shale in the world. This is where it gets interesting. The richest shale in the world is pretty much here in Joadja. They're getting up to 700 litres of oil, or crude oil, out of each tonne. The world average closer to 200 or 300, we're getting up to 700 here. To about 400 degrees Celsius in here. When it gets to that level, it's giving off the hot oily vapours, going through a pipe out the back into a condenser where it cools down back to a liquid, exactly the same as a still. We're going to see that a little bit later for making whiskey. Also, finally, at the 1905 bushfire goes through, wipes out everything. They abandon the mines and the processing, continue with the orchard for the next 6 years. 7% of the material coming out of the condenser is waste material we call pitch. and tar, which is this black stuff here. That's gone hard now because we've had a cold snap. Normally it's quite gooey during warmer weather. I'd walk on there and I'll sink straight away. That's the little stack behind us, and we've parked the trolley right here next to the stack to your right. Big corrugated iron fence all the way around. It's actually enamelled on the inside so that if anything hits it, it won't spark up and ignite any of the flammable liquids or gases floating around. So we took over, it was an empty shelf. The previous owner, Mark Longavati was his name, he did have some stills and some barrels about to get cracking. The sweetest of the sherry comes from a great variety known as PX. You may have heard of PX wine or Pedro Ximenez wine. Well, guess what? Jimenez happens to be my surname as well. So anyway, my ears pricked up. Next thing I know, I'm in Tassie picking up stills. Elisa's in southern Spain picking up barrels. We decided to go ahead and get Big Bertha over here, which is a wash still. And we already had the fermenters for here. We got some new fermenters for our wash, which is, I'll explain in a minute. And we ended up getting a vodka and a gin still over here as well in the last 6 to 12 months. Does anyone know how much excise we pay for every litre of ethanol that comes out of the still here? And we do 100 a day, 100 litres a day. No, it's not a percentage, it's a dollar value for the litre. $81 for 1 litre, and we do 100 a day, so that's $8,000 a day for the federal government when we're running. But we don't pay that at the front, we pay it when it becomes available to sell. So over the next couple of years, we'll be probably stockpiling a couple of $1 million worth of whiskey, and there'll be quite a few $100,000 of excise for the federal government at the end.